So one of the things that can make the biggest difference when you're sewing with knits is the type of needle that you're using. If you're using the wrong needle, then the whole project may be a disaster and it's just not going to come out right at all. There's two different types of needles that you can use. One is a universal needle, and even on the back here it says for most wovens, which are the fabrics that don't stretch, and knits. And then there's other projects like leather, denim, it says stretch or coarse knitwear that you'll want to get a specialty needle for. So if you just have a really basic, especially something like a kind of sturdy knit, then a universal needle will work great for that. A medium weight universal needle, which is about 11 to 12 gauge. And they're going to say all that on the package. And any fabric store should be able to help you with these kind of questions. Even if someone doesn't sew, if they work there, they should definitely know where these are, what the gauge is, what type of needle it is, and can help you out. If you're sewing with something like swimwear or lycra, I made a leotard for my daughter this summer, things like that, or something real slippery, then you definitely want a ballpoint needle. The difference is it's a little bit rounded on the end, so it's not actually cutting into the fabric, it's just pushing the fabric to the side and sewing around them. Some fabrics, like a leather needle, is actually cutting into the fabric. It has a much sharper tip. But with woven, it's all like a continuous string of thread, and so you don't want to cut into it. It can create holes in your fabric and just not make it work right when you're sewing. It can cause a lot of problems. So if you're in doubt, if you don't know, well, I don't know if I need a universal needle or if I need a ballpoint needle, I would say if you're sewing with knits, just get the ballpoint needle just to be safe. If you are in the middle of a project and your kids are already napping and you have a universal needle, then go ahead and use that. And if you run into problems, then later you can go get the ballpoint needle at the fabric store. But if you're gonna go and get a needle, then get the ballpoint needle to sew with knits. The other thing that is really important is the type of stitch that you're using on your machine. Now most machines, when you turn them on, they're just doing a straight stitch. It's basically like one after the other in a straight line. It's just going to go straight down. You can make that stitch wider or shorter depending on what you're doing. Well, with a knit, that's terrible. You do not want to do a straight stitch because, like we've already talked about, your fabric stretches. If you have a straight line of stitches and you barely stretch your fabric, you'll just hear it pop. It's the worst thing. I've done it before on accident on some shirts I sewed for my boys, and as soon as I pulled them over their head, the threads popped and they had holes all down the sides because I just completely forgot that you can't do that on a woven fabric. That's not going to work. So pretty much every machine, even if you have a beginner machine, you're going to have a zigzag stitch. It just goes back and forth, just like that. And so when you stretch the fabric, the stitch on it of the thread stretches along with it. Because if you think about it, your thread isn't stretching. Your thread is just going to stay the same, but your fabric is stretching. So that zigzag design helps it stretch with your fabric. Now there's some fancier types of stitches. If you have a machine that has lots of options, you might have different options to work with and more than one type of stitch. But every machine should have zigzag, and even though I have a machine that has like a few hundred types of stitches, I pretty much mostly always use the zigzag on knits. So that's another important tip.